What's going on? Welcome back to Off the Schneid. Today we're going to take a look at the Las Vegas Raiders heading into the 2022 NFL Draft. We're kind of post-free agency for the most part. Trades and stuff are trickling in as well. This team made a big one. Almost every team in the NFL has made a big trade these past couple years. It's wild times, but you can see my draft needs here. Like I said, the draft is in about 2 weeks roughly. We got the draft capital up there. We'll talk about that trade in a second here. So let's kick it off at the quarterback position like we always do. We got Carr. Actually, let's talk about coaching first. Obviously, this team went through some stuff. They went through some nonsense. The Henry Ruggs thing was obviously extremely, extremely unfortunate for a lot of people. And hopefully, everybody can recover from that sort of a thing. It's pretty awful for every single person involved with that situation, what happened there. The John Gruden stuff, yeah, whatever. Like I never was a big fan of John Gruden, actually, if I'm being honest with you. If you watch this channel, I'm not lying there. Go watch the video from last year. I was questioning whether he was going to be the guy. Mike Mayock is gone as well. Josh McDaniels coming in, I think, will provide some stability, and I'm a huge believer and fan of Josh McDaniels, as not only just an offensive play caller, but as a leader and potentially a head coach. We'll see. He didn't have extreme luck or success in his first run, but that was a bit of a subpar team. I think he's got a better team here with a better opportunity. So with that being said, again, we'll hit quarterback here. Derek Carr just re-signed a big deal. A lot of people don't like Derek Carr. Derek Carr gets a lot of hate. I don't hate him. I really don't. I think he's a top 15 quarterback. I think he's a guy that can absolutely get the job done. I think he's a good leader. I think he can make every play you need him to make. I like Derek Carr. I don't know why he gets so much hate, to be honest with you. And, clearly the Raiders agree a little bit, at least. They're going to pay him some money, but I think they can get out of it, in a year or two, which is, the constant for Derek Carr. But good for him, man. He just believes in himself. He's like, I don't need that guaranteed money. I know you're going to have me on your roster because I'm that good of a player. It's an interesting one. But obviously he's still there. Nick Mullins and Garrett Gilbert are penciled in as the backup quarterbacks here. I think Nick Mullins is absolutely a backup quarterback, and he can be your backup quarterback. So I'm happy with him there. I don't think you need to address it. Skip over to the running back position. They're an interesting spot here with running back. I could see them addressing it. I don't have it as a need. I mean, if you want to say any, but I think linebacker is the other one with safety and slash any. I think it should be safety slash linebacker, but I think they could address it and they could add a running back. Why? They haven't yet. I do expect them to pick up the 5th-year option on Josh Jacobs. Kenyon Drake will be gone from this team after this season, and it's a different regime, and unless they really like him, I don't see them bringing him back. Brandon Bolden's 32 years old and signed a 2-year deal. They can get out of it after this year, so he might not be on this team after this season. So they're going to have to add a guy, but they could wait until next offseason or next year's draft and grab a guy. It's not a huge concern, but it's something worth just kind of thinking about and keeping in the back of your head as a fan and as a franchise. But I do really like Josh Jacobs. I think he's still extremely underrated. Yes, underrated, still very young. Considering how bad this offensive line is and was last year, it's amazing to see how well he did. And then when Kenyon Drake got hurt and went down, he filled in as the pass catching back, no problem. So he's a 3-down running back. He absolutely is. And we'll see how Josh McDaniels uses him here, but I think he should take a step up, and hopefully they're not taking touches away from him and giving them to anybody else. I think, Brandon Bolden will get some because of the, familiarity with the offense. He might just replace Kenyon Drake, but we'll see how it all shakes out. Either way, I like Josh Jacobs quite a bit. Jakob Johnson comes over also from the Patriots, obviously with Josh McDaniels. He's going to be that blocking guy, chipping here and there a little bit, but he's a phenomenal blocker, and he might catch a couple passes out of the backfield and play action, stuff like that. We'll see. But he's a quality fullback, might be in my top 5. And I like fullbacks if you watch this channel a lot, and he might be in my top 5. I haven't exactly done the rankings because fullbacks aren't sexy sexy, but it's all right. We'll move to tight end. Darren Waller, one of the better pass catching tight ends in the NFL. He's not a complete tight end. He's not completely rounded, but he's a phenomenal threat and just a mismatch nightmare for linebackers, safeties, nickel corners. I don't think you ever put a nickel corner on him personally, but either way, he's a mismatch nightmare, and he's absolutely, a 1,000-yard receiver in the NFL. He showed it. Foster Moreau, I think, is an extremely underrated. I think he could start on a lot of other teams at tight end. Me as a Bengals fan, I would take Foster Moreau over Hayden Hurst, who's now penciled in as the starter at tight end. I would take Foster Moreau over him, to be honest with you. Jacob Hollister as well. Nick Bowers, yeah, that's all fine and good. I don't think they need to add a tight end. Obviously, with Moreau and Waller, I think they're fine there. And then they can add, free agent bodies if need be. So we'll move to the offensive line, and this is probably where I'll spend the majority of my time on this episode, because this is the most important part, of this team right now that needs to be fixed. It absolutely has to be addressed and fixed. So we'll talk about Colton Miller for a second here. He's absolutely fine. He's a very good left tackle. He's, penned, sharpied in as your left tackle, and you really need him to stay healthy. Andre James was a fantastic surprise. And, we do only have this 1 year of proof that he can do it, but there's no reason to think that he's not going to be able to do it again next year and be a quality center in the NFL. Undrafted free agent guy. I think they got him for cheap for a couple more years. So realistically, those are the only two guys, Colton Miller, Andre James, are the only two guys that you have sharpied in as starters on this offensive line, if I'm being honest. Denzel Good has played a lot. John Simpson, they're hoping can be a guy. He's a former Clemson, I believe, draft pick. Brandon Parker was a third-round pick, but he hasn't quite worked out. Alex Leatherwood was a terrible draft pick in my opinion. He is not a first-round talent. Anyways, he's on the team. It is what it is. So what I do to fix this offensive line the best that I think that I can is I probably draft a real right tackle at 86. I move Alex Leatherwood. He was a first-round pick. You have to have him find a home. You have to. He did not have a good season whatsoever last year. He was a rookie. I'm hoping that or you're hoping as a Raiders fan that he can take that step and at least have a home on this offensive line. And where is that home? Right guard, probably. You would hope right tackle, but I'm not trusting him. I'm really not. So right guard, you're hoping. So if that's penned in, you got Andre James, Alex Leatherwood at right guard, Colton Miller, and then John Simpson and Denzel Good. You're hoping one of those two can be the guy at left guard. And then you draft a right tackle and you have Brandon Parker as your swing guy. That hopefully completes this line. Hopefully. Without the draft capital, in that trade for obviously Devontae Adams was the big reason they don't have a ton of draft capital there, but they don't have a lot, so you have to hit at 86 and potentially at 126 as well. You have to hit, and I'm not going to say it's easier to hit at offensive line, but it's less, I don't know, there's less of a, bust word getting thrown out there towards offensive linemen. So I think that that's what you do. You get a real true, if it's a left tackle in college, you move him to the right side. I know that's what Alex Leatherwood did, and he did not work out, but you got to take a shot and hope that hoping you can make a guy your starting right tackle. So yeah, we'll see. That's where I think their biggest problem is on this offensive line, and it needs addressing because the rest of this team is very, very good. Very good in my opinion. Obviously they were a playoff team last year, and there's people talking about Derek Carr getting traded. You're not making the playoffs and then blowing it up. That makes zero sense. Zero sense. I think anyone that said that Derek Carr should get traded or cut or anything is an idiot. That just makes no sense whatsoever. You are a playoff team. Yeah, the AFC West is a tough division. You're not just going to concede it. You're not just going to say, oh, we suck because everyone else is good, trade everything, blow it up. No, and what they did what they should do. They went out and added pieces where they lacked and made this team better, which was the smart thing to do. So yeah, get a little heated there. There's really the hate on Derek Carr drives me a little bit nuts. But let's move to the wide receivers. Obviously, Devontae Adams, the college teammate of Derek Carr, they have a rapport. And there's no reason to think that it won't transfer to the NFL. Obviously, they've had success separate. They had success together in college, and there's no reason to think that they won't have success in a very quality offensive system with Josh McDaniels. And we'll see if that changes a little bit, if it gets a little more pass heavy, without being under the thumb of Bill Belichick, who I know wants to run the ball more. I'm not saying more than Josh McDaniels, but I feel like, he'll open it up a little more than, Bill Belichick would have let him, if that makes sense, in New England. So we'll see how that shakes out. Hunter Renfro, again, if you watch this channel, I'm a massive fan of Hunter Renfro. I think he's one of the best slot receivers in the NFL right now. Probably a top, 3 healthy top 5 slot receiver in the NFL right now. I liked Bryan Edwards coming out of the draft. He's got to show it. He's got to be that guy this year, that number 2, that true number 2, even though you do have Darren Waller and then your slot receiver is very good. So he doesn't have to do anything crazy. Realistically, I think 600, 700 yards out of Bryan Edwards and 4 touchdowns is a quality stat line for that number 2 wide receiver in this offense, right? Matt Collins is a quality vet. He's been around a long time. He can get the job done in a pinch. Tyron Johnson, he's a good downfield guy, speedster. He's a good guy to have on the roster. And Demarcus Robinson, he's had some issues with the Chiefs, but he knows the division, I guess. He's an NFL wide receiver. He's not a starting NFL wide receiver, but he's an NFL wide receiver and a good quality depth guy. So I think that they could add a wide receiver, but again, with the limited depth, limited draft capital here, it's not a huge need, but they could look to address it, and I'd be okay if they grabbed a wide receiver somewhere. We'll see how that shakes out. We'll move to the defensive side of the ball. Obviously, they brought in a few guys that I really, really like. Chandler Jones, obviously, that was a huge get. Him and Max Crosby should really cause some damage in this division. Those are 2 fantastic pass rushers. Obviously, Max Crosby showed Pro Bowler this year, showed that he's a premier guy, just an endless motor. He's a guy that you can't not like as a football fan. So he's a quality guy. Cleveland Farrell, you might be able to throw that bust label on him, but he's a former first-round pick. He's still on this team. You're hoping that he can at least be rotational, stopgap type of guy if there's an injury, that sort of thing. Malcolm Koontz, another guy, third-round pick last year. He's a quality guy. And Kyler Fackrell, he's not a linebacker. He's going to probably play defensive end for this team. He's been majority of his career outside linebacker, edge rusher type of guy, and he probably, he's a little undersized weight-wise, but, he's fine. I would be more than okay with Kyler Fackrell as a defensive end on my team, and I think he makes sense there for this team. Bilal Nichols was a fantastic grab. He's a very underrated interior defensive tackle. Can get after the quarterback a little bit, but he's just a very, very, very quality football player. We'll see how he transitions from a 3-4 to a 4-3. I don't think it's a big deal, and I really like Bilal Nichols, so we'll see what he does. Jonathan Hankins, another guy who's a very quality player. He's fine as a run stuffer, nose tackle. Same with Vernon Butler. He's fine. I do like him quite a bit. He can definitely get the job done. And then Andrew Billings, he's been fairly quality in his career, came into the NFL as a very, very young 20-year-old, I believe, when he got drafted by my Cincinnati Bengals. He's bounced around a little bit, but he's had a decent career, and he can get the job done. I think he had like 2.5 sacks last year, so he can help out on the defensive line, especially if he's certainly not like, a piece. He's just a depth guy. Bringing it back towards the linebackers here, Jalen Brown comes in from the Tennessee Titans, fantastic leader type guy, and I do think that he can get the job done as a starter. Micah Kaiser as well, former Ram. He comes over. I think he was on this team last year as well, and another just depth guy, but I do think they're going to have to add in the draft. So where I have any over here, where I have any safety or linebackers where I'm looking, but again, limited draft capital, so we'll see what they do. And then Denzel Perriman, he finally, maybe this is just the system that he's going to excel in. He played in more of a 3-4 in LA with the Chargers. He had some injuries here and there, and just maybe it wasn't the system for him, because he was sixth, I think, in the league in tackles last year. So maybe this is finally just the system that he can fit in properly and excel in, because he did last year. So there's no reason to think he won't with the same, or similar system. I believe they retained their defensive coordinator. I think he's still on the team as the defensive coordinator. I could be wrong, and correct me in the comments if I am wrong, but I'm pretty sure he's the same defensive coordinator that was here last year. Divine Diablo as well. He's another guy, safety turned linebacker. He can be that coverage linebacker, so he could chip in, and it decreases the need for that, again, safety linebacker. But I do still think you need a tackler, a tackling linebacker, an inside linebacker to be a depth guy. It's not a huge need, and they might not have the draft capital to even address it, but there you go. I thought I'd mention it. Corners, they brought in a bunch of guys, so they just hit free agency. They brought in Rock Ya-Sin and Anthony Averett. There he is. They brought those two guys in, and then Nate Hobbs had a decent year. Trayvon Mullen, former second-round pick. They just need one of these guys. They don't particularly have an identity in the back end of this defense. They have it on the front end, and adding Chandler Jones might just push that back end, over the top with helping out, getting after the quarterback, making their job easier back there. So maybe that's what the difference is going to be, and these guys will be fine, because Rock Ya-Sin is not a bad player. Anthony Everett's not a bad player. Trayvon Mullen, he's been hit or miss, but again, with that help, same thing with Nate Hobbs, hit or miss, but with that help up front, it might make the world a difference here. Amik Robertson can be a quality nickel corner. I don't mind him at all. Same with Trevin Moehrig. He was a second-round pick last year. Jonathan Abram, might be able to kind of force that identity I was talking about. He's a hard-hitting, strong safety in the box type of guy. I think he can be that leader on the back end, including probably linebackers, even though Perriman is probably, I would assume, a good leader as well. I actually don't know about that one, but you need some help on the back end as far as leadership and bringing that identity. And I think Jonathan Abram, I think he can be that guy. So we'll see. He had an injury, I think, in his rookie year, came back last year, played really well, and then this year he should excel again and take that next step. So there you go. That's about it. That's all I got for the Las Vegas Raiders. There's your team needs. Like I said, we went over some things, but the draft capital is going to be a bit of an issue, and you have to sort out that offensive line first and foremost, whether you do it through some free agency grabs or the draft or a combination of both. They're going to have to sort out that offensive line if they want a chance to get back to the playoffs and hopefully get to the Super Bowl, because with all of these additions that they made in free agency, that is absolutely what their aspirations are. I don't care how good this division is. If I'm a Raiders fan, and if I'm in the Raiders locker room and in the front office of the Raiders, I don't care how good this division is. I made a playoffs last year. We're going to make a push, and we have Super Bowl aspirations. That's where I'm at if I'm a Raiders fan, and if I'm in the front office or in the locker room of this team. So there you go. There's your draft prep for the 2022 Las Vegas Raiders. Let me know what you think in the comments, and we'll see you on the next video.